You're listening to the Raw Honeys Podcast, the place to be real, be love, and befriend. Join Chelsea Fine, Heather Hildenbrand, and me, Amanda Axel. We're real friends who aren't afraid to talk about the raw truth of real life. If you're looking for a group of girlfriends who will support and encourage you when the going gets tough, this is the place to be. Pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and enjoy the show.
Hey honeys, and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. This is Heather Hildenbrand, and I'm here with Amanda Axel and Chelsea Fine to talk to you today about a state of being. So I'm just going to admit right now, it has taken me a long time, many self-help books, success coach podcasts, guided meditation gurus, all kinds of stuff to fully soak in what it means to really have a positive state of being and why that's so important. I know it sounds really simple in the moment to have a positive state of being, just to say the words, but I will tell you, if you've ever tried, you know this to be true, our ego brains are the most self-sabotaging tricksters out there. So if you hear me say this and you're nodding your head while you're internally scoffing or rejecting this topic, or just the idea of what we're going to talk about today, just know that I have been you many times. But I really encourage you to keep listening and keep your heart open, because this is the real secret to manifesting your desires, to inner peace, and to true happiness. It's not about getting something, it's about being something. In fact, once you start being someone who has that thing that you want, guess what? That thing that you want shows up. Conversely, if you aren't being the kind of person who's a match to having that thing, then don't hold your breath. Now, I've really begun to understand the importance of how I feel and what I think because I've begun paying attention to those things. And I can see when they're not in alignment. And when I'm in charge of my thoughts and feelings, not the other way around, that's when I notice the real difference. First in my heart and mind, and then in my outer environment. So I want to ask, before we go any further, Amanda and Chelsea, what you guys think about how important it is, this state of being that we're talking about. And when I say state of being, I don't mean anything to do with your actions. I don't mean there's anything that you can do to be better, like our society teaches us. I'm just talking about like how you feel, how you cultivate your state of being. So, Amanda, how about you first? Tell me what you think about all this. Is this something you are aware of, that you think about? Is this on your radar, this like, it's important, this positive state of being?
Absolutely. And I mean, I really think that the way that you're being, the way that you're feeling really is everything, because it motivates your actions most of the time, not in every single case. And I'll talk about that later, actually, because I thought about that when you were sharing all of that. But yeah, I definitely think that it's really important to pay attention to how you feel and, you know, and yeah, having that state of being, you know, like you mentioned happiness, true happiness. And we learn, you know, through a lot of these self-help books and through, you know, a lot of Eastern philosophies and things like that, that Buddhism is, or sorry, I just said Buddhism, happiness. Because to me, happiness and Buddhism are synonymous.
I love it. I love that you just did that.
I know.
So much.
Great.
Was that a Freudian slip? Would you call it that?
Yes.
I don't know. But happiness already exists inside of you. And it's really just a matter of pulling it out. So feeling good exists inside of you. It's just a matter of, like Heather was saying, cultivating it.
So even if you're feeling, I'm just going to like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pretend I'm one of our listeners, or I'm going to pretend I'm me like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So like, even if I'm feeling shitty right now about my life, when I look at my circumstances or my bank account or my relationships or whatever, happiness is already inside me right now. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify so everybody hears it.
Yes. And just to extra clarify, I am not just talking about Heather Hildenbrand over here, my girl, who I know happiness exists inside of her, or Chelsea Fine, but I'm talking about everybody, okay? You and yeah, you, the one brushing your teeth right now, you.
The one putting on her mascara while she's driving down the highway.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. We're talking to you. Happiness is in there. All right. What about you, Chelsea? How much does this, like, truth, is it a truth for you? How much does it play into, your life?
My perspective is, well, it is life. It is 100% is what I would say personally. Because there's motion and there's non-motion, and a state of being is a proactive motion, even if you're sitting perfectly still. We don't usually have a choice outside of a state of being. We're almost always in some kind of state of being. And so if we're going to be in a state, the state of being that we're discussing specifically here, that you're talking about, Heather, is this higher level, right? We're talking about a state of being that's like enriching and it's the fulfillment of who we are and what we are and where we are and all these things, or who we will become, where we're gonna go, all of those. To me, it's everything. And I have all of my life years of evidence to kind of back that up. It's like we're all participating in a magic video game, whether we like it or not. So we either need to get on board and like pick a character, pick a weapon or whatever, pick a path. And we can always change our minds, but we are who we decide sort of to be when we wake up in the morning a little bit, like you're saying. And even on days when it's really hard, especially on days when we're feeling really icky or everything's going wrong, or seasons of life that are just heavy, or there's lots of negativity and stuff, especially in those times, I see that I feel that the state of being of who I am and who the people around me kind of are, it directly and emphatically affects everything, all circumstances. So yeah, I would say 100%. Definitely. It should be like, for me, it's like the ultimate goal. Get to this, learn it, I don't know, this happiness that we're talking about, this, or I would say maybe even beyond that, like contentment, which I know a lot of times we tend to kind of associate as something just short of happiness. But personally, I actually think that they are two different entities and equally powerful. I think there's a lot of beauty and power in contentment alone. And so sometimes on those really crappy days when we can't find happiness that's inside us because we know it's there, sometimes for me, a path to find that happiness begins with contentment, if that makes any sense,
Yeah, totally. Well, I think what you're saying is totally it, because I hear all these like spiritual gurus talk about this, but it's for real for me is, learning how to be content with things the way they are is how you get to a more positive state of being. Because like you said, there's going to be all this stuff that's happening to you that you're not in control of. The only thing you're really in control of is how you feel. And if that's the case, then it stands to reason that's our really like only or main tool that we have in order to feel better. And really, that's the goal. Changing the circumstances isn't always the goal, I think. I think feeling better is the goal, because this is something you can control. I mean, obviously, you want to change the circumstances too. But like you said, a lot of times you change how you feel, and then the circumstances really do begin to shift, because that's what you're attracting. Kind of like what you put out, you get back. You put out good stuff, and you get back more good stuff. And then, vice versa. Like if you put out bad stuff, you're just going to attract more bad stuff. And I'm sure our listeners, can think back to, when you woke up on the wrong side of the bed one day and you were just in a pissed off mood. And then that whole train just kept on going for the whole rest of the day. And then we tend to think like, oh, I just had a bad day because everybody was rude to me, when really a lot of times it's just what your point of attraction was from the moment you got up. And I know I've noticed that for myself so many times when I'm not paying attention and I let my mood get swayed by what's happening to me. And then I'm just in this responsive mode. I'm responding to everything instead of being in charge of how I feel. And it didn't really kind of click for me, or I didn't become aware of this or really like start working on it until I was an adult, because this isn't really something that people talked a lot about when I was younger. I did get told all the time to control my emotions. Like emotion was, not a good display, right? Children should be seen and not heard. Like that really was said in my house. So especially with emotion, that was no good. But it wasn't like, hey, go, let's meditate. Let's like get control of how you're feeling so that you own it instead of it owning you. It was more just like, go away. We don't want to see it or whatever. So it wasn't quite productive, but yeah, so it didn't like, I kind of went down the self-help rabbit hole 6-ish years ago now. And ever since then, where I like taught myself all of this and how important it is. But before that, it really wasn't. And so I'm curious about you guys, and if that was similar, like if growing up there was any emphasis on achieving that positive state of being or getting control of your emotions, especially when you're in tough situations, because it does make a big difference. When did that shift for you? So what about you, Amanda?
Well, I think actually it started, so first of all, when I was growing up, there was no, you need to control your emotions. My mom was emotional and I was emotional and that was okay.
I know, I want to hang out with your mom.
That was okay. And we're sensitive beings, so it worked for us. But I do remember I got transferred from San Diego to Virginia when I was 15 years old because my stepdad was in the military. And that's an awful age to be, taken from your home with your friends and everything. And like, oh gosh. And growing up in San Diego is absolutely amazing. And I love Virginia. Virginia is my home now. This is where I live. But at that time, I hated it. I hated all the stupid trees and the stupid rain and the stupid flat roads and everything was just stupid, And I literally bought black curtains for my bedroom because I was just biding my time until I was 18 years old and I could go back home.
You didn't even want to see it.
No.
You just put up the curtain.
Yeah. I didn't want to make friends. I didn't want to get connected to this area at all. Like just nothing.
Did that send a message to the universe that it was rough for you at first because you were against it?
I mean, I'm sure it did because that first year that I was in school, I remember my was sophomore year, it sucked.
Yeah.
It just plain old sucked. Now, I mean, like, I made a few friends and things like that, but I was just depressed most of the time, and I just remember, and, the second year got a little bit better and so on, and by the time I left high school, because I still had this desire to return home to California, so even though I was trying to embrace a little more, I really wasn't all in yet, I wasn't really accepting my circumstances as they were, and I was allowing them to defeat me. So I remember after high school, like I looked at, the last few years of my life and I was not happy with what had come out of it, like for myself. And that's when I really decided to sort of change my perspective. And that process has led me to many places. And I'm also a self-proclaimed self-development junkie. I also, practice a philosophy that teaches this idea, kind of like what Heather was talking about, oneness of self and environment, that, the only way that you really change the world, the only way you really change your circumstances is you have to change yourself first. And once you do that, once you become that person, once you reveal the true nature of your life, then that's when your environment starts to reflect that. And our environment is always going to reflect what's going on in our life. Now, I don't say that to be like, a negative thing, like, oh, like, that means that, like, something bad is happening in my life because this bad circumstance is happening. And, it's not always that black and white. But it does mean that you have an opportunity to overcome something, and change something in your life really big. So I could just go on and on. So I'm going to stop it there.
Well, we're going to come back because it was all good stuff. So we're going to come back to it. So what about you, Chels?
I was pretty fortunate growing up because my family, the women in my family, the adult family members that, raised me, my grandma, my mother, my aunts, they all were really good examples of trying to harness their headspace, right? Trying to find that and maintain that kind of like contentment or their own version of a state of being with all different methods. And so I had a lot of really good female examples of how to handle tough things with grace. And so I think I spent probably most of my childhood just mimicking what I saw, like kind of ritualistic, kind of going through the motions, like something for some of my family members was, reading scripture would really calm them down. Or my grandma, this is my personal favorite. My grandma would always say, because my grandma has been through some hard stuff and I've never seen that woman crack. You know what I mean? Like, she's amazing. She is amazing. And I would be so jealous of her as a little girl because she could handle stuff without batting an eye, and I couldn't, because I am a highly emotional creature, and I love that about myself. But it was, especially when I was young, it's hard to contain emotions or emote them appropriately, But she would just be so calm, and I would ask her about it, like, oh, why aren't you mad, or why aren't you sad, or and she would always just kind of say the same thing. She'd say, Chelsea, count your blessings. Just count your blessings. You cannot feel all these heavy, hard things if you're counting your blessings. Now, the counting your blessings thing is not something that worked really for me as a child. It's something I did mimic and do. But it wasn't until I was in my late 20s and started to experience some of the harder things of just human life. And I had some rough years where I was really thrown down. And I think I reached like a rock bottom kind of place emotionally where I had to kind of choose. Am I going to just stay here and wither in this dark, lonely, hollow place? Or am I going to look up and actively enter a state of being, even though I didn't know to call it state of being, right? So it has been an ongoing evolution for me. And I think it kind of all came to an apex just a few years ago when I experienced a really powerful plant medicine and then kind of moved my life down a different path that kind of opened up a bunch of horizons for me. And the concept of state of being is a really dominant part of, or I want it to be a very dominant part of my life every day right now, who I am, because I'm aware of it. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. The state of being that we're discussing right now is not a concept that even crossed my path at all until just the last few years of my life, And so it's more like I'm just barely embracing this new thing I found out that I have possession of or control of,
So something that you said made me think, actually, if you go a step deeper than a positive state of being, I think what that means, at least what that meant for me, was getting really content and okay with who I am, because who you are dictates your state of being. What you think about yourself, your opinion of yourself, right? And your beliefs about yourself and the world. So this is probably going into a rabbit hole that we could spend a lot of time on, and we might come back to some of this. But I feel like if somebody is listening to this for the first time and this is their moment where it starts to click or shift or whatever, like you, Chelsea, I think we've all been someplace where we knew we could, if we kept doing the things we were doing, then we were going to keep, experiencing the things we were experiencing. And I love this. I always say this, the pain of staying there was worse than the fear of changing, right? Or moving forward in a different direction. That was totally me. The pain of staying in that, because I could see my life and I knew if I didn't change something massive, inside me, then it was just going to keep going the way it was. And I was just going to slowly die. My soul was just going to slowly die. That's what was happening. And so the pain of that was worse than the fear of stepping out and doing some crazy things. I got a divorce when that was not the thing to do in my family and my community. I was called into my church like it was the principal's office and told about myself. And, it was super scary. I'm not talking about little things. And I want our listeners to know that, Chelsea, what you went through, Amanda, what we've been through is not little things where we're oh, just wake up and have a good attitude. Yeah, fuck you. That's way easier said than done, right? We know that. And we want to say that we know that. But for me, when that changed, when I decided that it was more important to cultivate how I feel than anything else, that it came before anybody else, was when I decided that I didn't like who I was as a person, and I knew who I wanted to be, or I started to figure out who I wanted to be. So I started figuring out, what do I believe about the world? When I was a kid, and they told me, children are better seen than heard, and your emotions are wrong. What you feel is wrong. Change how you feel to match what we want you to feel, and that will be right. And that was the message I heard loud and clear and took with me for a long time that really messed me up. So I've done a lot of work to reframe my whole belief system about what I think about the world. Like when I was depressed and I was going through that, like really dark time for myself, this was before my divorce actually. I had something else really traumatic happen that made me question who I was. I literally bought a journal and I started writing down things I knew for sure about myself. I went through a really hard identity crisis. I lost it. I lost who I was. I lost who I was in my family, who I was as a human. I thought everything was a lie. And so I bought a journal and I literally wrote down what my favorite color was. That's where I started because it was that rock bottom, like I wasn't sure about anything. Everything felt like a lie. So I was like, I don't know. Do I even like purple? And that sounds so funny, but that is how I felt. So if that is where you are, before you can get to feeling good all the time, you have to like yourself. And before you can like yourself, you gotta know yourself. And I know that you guys went through similar things. Like you get to an age where you question, even if you don't have a trauma, you start to question the beliefs that were handed to you. And that's great because they're not always going to serve you. And so if you believe that your life is going to be shitty forever, like good luck getting to a positive state of being, right? I mean, it's not even going to matter.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Your life's going to be shitty forever.
Right. So talk about that. Like, Amanda, like, what about you? What do you feel about your beliefs about who you are and the world around you? How important is that to achieving feeling good?
I'm going to think about that for a second. Yeah, I think that the thing about feeling good and like really understanding about who we really are and what's inside of us, how happiness is inside of us, and strength is inside of us, and all these wonderful things, I think just really comes from changing that belief system of understanding what you really are. You know what I mean? And knowing that you were born here for a reason. Like you came to be alive for a reason. There are no wasted bodies on this planet.
For a good reason.
Yeah, for
right?
a good reason. Yeah. Because if we don't need you, then we don't need you. You'll come in later.
Right.
So yeah, actually I think that's a big thing. And I mean, for me, absolutely. I get down on myself, constantly. I'm still battling with that. I'm still trying to help myself understand and say, remember what you really are. Remember how amazing you really are. And I'm not saying that from like an arrogant standpoint, like, oh, I'm Amanda, I'm so amazing.
I don't even care if we decided to call it arrogant. Whatever you want to call it, that's good. That's how it should be,
But everybody is amazing,
yes.
And I don't have any issues thinking that everybody else is fantastic and they have the ability to do X, Y, and Z. I have the most challenge believing that about myself, and that's something that I'm constantly working on. And so I have to continually remind myself, well, if it's true for them, then it's true for you, so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So do you think that, I'm curious, because I've never thought about this until I was listening to you talk. Do you think that when you run into like roadblocks or you're struggling with maintaining this positive state of being or like a good feeling, do you think that more often those roadblocks are how you feel about yourself? Like, and how you sometimes maybe tend to negative self-talk, or are they the outer circumstances that we sometimes can blame our bad moods on?
Well, in a weird way, I think it's both, but I think that the truth is that it's yourself. See, every time that we have some kind of obstacle in our way, or we have any kind of hindrance, whether it's in your job or your relationship or with your kids or whatever, if it's just someone who's cutting you off in traffic, we tend to feel very victimized in those moments. Right. Why me? Why is this happening?
Right. It's happening to me. Right.
Yeah. But I love the phrase, life does not happen to you, it happens for you. I have to tell myself that constantly. And I mean, to be completely honest with you guys, I feel like I just got to a point in my life, like literally in the past month, 6 weeks or so, where I can really embrace my challenges. Like I understand the value in those challenges. But the reason that we get so discouraged every time we face something is because we believe that we are not equipped to handle that. And so we feel like a victim. We feel like we're defeated, and we feel like it's somebody else's fault, and someone else has to fix it, and they have to change.
For us to feel better.
Right, for us to feel better. But again, it goes back to the oneness of self and environment. If you want your situation to change, I'm like waving my finger around like I
love it.
You want your whole situation to change, then you need to change. I love it.
Should be a commercial.
I know. Too bad this isn't like video. Like you guys.
That would be a whole different level of entertainment if this was video.
I just told you guys, okay? Sorry. I'm the fun one.
You are, because
I'm actually really not the fun one.
Well, in terms of like the pep talk that you were just giving, where you're like, I just told you about yourself, that was fun because like when I tough love you, like I know you guys both think this about, when I tough love you, it's serious. When you just tough loved them, you were smiling. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
You be careful who you ask to tough love you. Chelsea is going to tell you, you're fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Amanda is going to wave her finger and her neck around a lot.
Yeah, and I'm going to do some kind of voice.
I get really serious.
You know what? Okay, that's another subject.
Good at it.
I love getting tough because sometimes you need a smack in the face.
Well, the emphasis on the tough part is how I roll, I guess.
Yeah, but you know what? But at the same time, it's always with compassion.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
There's always a positive spin on it, you guys, because Heather knows that she's a positive being, and that if she wants to encourage the person in front of her, she has to bring that positivity.
That's right.
Okay, so even though she's being tough, there's a lot of beauty and positivity in it. Okay,
it's true. It's true. All right, good.
That's how it goes down.
All right, just checking.
Listen, you want Heather to tough love you. Okay, like,
you do.
You want that. Especially once you hit rock bottom, then like you can just do it yourself. You're like, this, you know.
What would Heather say?
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm taking this.
Total tangent. Okay, all right.
Take it off.
So, Chelsea. So, original question is, how do you feel your beliefs about yourself and about the world around you really impact your positive state of being? How important was that, and where was that a big part of the shift that happened for you when you got to be aware of that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all of it. I believe everything is connected, and interconnection is life force and all that. But even outside of like a believing in stuff like that, I mean, you can see it. You can see it as evidence in like everybody's life, and successful people, or just success stories, like how they kind of unfold. This notion that, okay, well, I guess let's go the opposite. Like, we don't usually hear success stories in any regards, emotional or professional or whatever. We don't usually hear success stories that like are launched by, well, yeah, I wasn't feeling good about myself, and I didn't like who I was. And so I shrunk inside and just decided to be bitter and angry. And then all my dreams came true. Like, you don't usually hear that story, right? Like, it's you gotta
never hear that story.
Yeah. You gotta participate. You have to participate in life only if you really desire certain goals, right? You don't have to participate, but like, if there's things that you desire, or if there are things that appeal to you, or if there are things that you want to share, that's a big one. Like, a lot of people are very scared to share their gifts, their talents, their wisdom, like it's you got to participate, which takes incredible bravery, which is like Heather making a list of the things that are true about herself. That's super brave, guys. That's dismantling a whole bunch of stuff that's been gathering for years. And it takes some guts to do that. You got to be a little brave, but like, that's what life's about. Life is an adventure. Like, we are living an adventure and you got to make moves. But you know what, like kind of what you're both talking about, it all kind of comes back to this point of permission, like giving ourselves permission to love who we are, or to forgive things about us or our past, or to embrace our own shortcomings, or to be honest about the things that are true for who we are and the true for what we want. Like, it seems silly, but I think part of the human condition is this fear of granting ourselves permission to be free. What do you guys think? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And actually, when you were saying that word permission, it just made me think about how, when it comes to success and succeeding, people either have one of two fears, either fear of failure or a fear of success. But I think the majority of people actually, believe it or not, have a fear of success because there is something inside of them that knows just how capable they are of achieving those goals. You know, like just how amazing they are. So it's interesting that there's a part of us that knows we have that, and yet we still hold that back. Yeah. Why? Don't do it, guys. Just let it out.
Yeah. So this is the perfect time. We've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Whoa, that was really cool where that went. That was not on our outline. That was awesome. I want to know what we do to cultivate this positive state of being, of self. And I really want us to think about this because, you know, all the spiritual guru answers are going to be like, have a mantra or, you know, meditate with a mantra every day or, you know, whatever. But I want to know from you guys, if that's the answer, great. But I want to know for real, like for real, when shit gets hard, when shit has gotten hard, when shit was real hard, when we had our, either we stay in pain the way it is, or we step out and do something different, you know, like it's comes down to this moment right here. What shifted for you? Like what was the thing you did or felt or told yourself or stopped doing or whatever that really made that stick for you? And then what do you do on a daily basis? And, you know, especially when something hard happens that really throws you off your emotional track, because I mean, let's face it, that still happens, okay, all the time, like every day, right? And then we get back on track. So what happened in that moment to really make you make that change? And then what keeps you on track or gets you back on track now? What about you?
So the short answer is I chant. I chant every day, and I chant a lot. And the days, and here's the thing, is you know the difference between that week you're feeling really good and that week you're just like, what the hell? Like, I just can't seem to get ahead. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And then if you start to think about it, you know, then you can see like, oh, I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. That's what chanting is like for me on those. Once I start slacking off, it's fine at first, but then it like spirals out of control and I've lost everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I know what I have to do. So chanting, exercise is a big one for me too. When I do both of those things in the morning, then I really do feel invincible. But actually, one of the things that I do is, you know, you have to recognize it. And I think just over time with age, you build a sort of wisdom about yourself. And starting to recognize certain things, you know, like for myself, you know, like I'm so caught up with some goals right now that I'm just super focused on making those happen. And those are the only things that matter and so on and so forth. And, you know, I was thinking recently, like, oh man, like I'm so focused on these goals that I forgot to be happy in my regular life. Like, duh, I could die tomorrow, you know, and like, you know, I need to just enjoy the small things too. So, you know, you kind of eventually, you know, build that, you know, that insight about yourself where you can catch yourself on certain things. But I will say that one of the biggest things that I do is when I'm feeling down, and you guys can both attest to this, is I call my friends. And because I say that we all suffer from amnesia, and so we have to be reminded about certain things. Like, I know this stuff. I know it, but in that low life state, you cannot think of it and you cannot act from that place because your mind is so clouded, your heart is so clouded that sometimes you need to have a really good friend to like reach into the muck and the hole and just like pull you out of it, you know? And so that's something that I do a lot. And actually, very recently, I did something else, is sometimes the person who can encourage you the most is yourself. And so something I do is, to teach myself lessons, I create audio notes on my phone from that place when it has happened, so that self can talk to this self, and because that self is there, can convince this self to get the hell out of there.
That's awesome.
So I recently,
That's amazing.
She let me listen to one not that long ago, and I was like, blown away.
You're incredible.
You will never get a better pep talk
right?
than your past self going through some shit.
Maybe I should publish some of these. Like, I don't know if they'll work for you.
We could put one, if you're cool with it, we could put one like in our Facebook group or something as like an audio clip, because it really was. It was, you were like, and you did the like finger shaking kind of voice again. You were like, listen, girl, don't ever go back to this place again, all right? Because it sucks. And like, it is real talk. It was so awesome.
It was about wasting time, and
it was.
I wasted some hours, and I was like, what the hell are you doing? But yeah, I recently did one about challenges and obstacles and like why I should embrace them, you know? And I was in a good place. I was in a good understanding about that. So I was able to speak very freely about that in a really great way. And what was so cool is like within days, something happened that knocked me off my kilter, right? And I was like, oh no, I don't want it. It feels yucky. I don't want it. And I wanted to cower away. And then I was like, wait a second, I just recorded that thing. So I listened to it. I remember I was in the car on the way home from the grocery store, and I was like, okay, yeah, I need this. I need this to develop a stronger sense of self, you know, so I can have a stronger state of being. Because the next time this happens, guess what? I'm going to be able to face it head on. No problem.
That's brilliant. And this is what I love about it, is you said as you get older, you develop a wisdom about yourself, and you start to learn what you personally respond to. Because I think the reason I was sort of like dismissive earlier about like, oh, they're going to say a mantra and like meditate with a mantra, which there's nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time. But it just starts to sound a little bit like cliche, because it's a blanket answer for everybody, and everybody's so different. You're going to respond to different things based on who you are and your personality, and it's not going to be the same as the next person. And so I think that's so cool that you figured out what works for you, and you're doing it, and it works. That's beautiful.
Yeah, because like from, you know, meditating to a mantra or chanting a mantra, like the whole point of all of those things is to develop wisdom, I feel. You know?
To know yourself better.
And develop courage. And sometimes that means all the time, that means taking an inspired action. And so for me, that was recording this thing or calling a friend or whatever. You know?
It's awesome. What about you, Chelsea? What did you do? Because I know, you know, when you were in it, when you were in the depression that you were in, and like, I know things changed. I know the plant medicine was a huge experience for you, but I also know, you know, and I don't know how much this plays into the question I'm asking about what you really felt changed you in that moment. But I know the plant medicine, one of the things it did was it did make you confront like your beliefs about you and bad things that had happened in your life, and like making peace with them. So I don't know if that plays into it. I mean, what do you feel like was the biggest shift at that time?
And I will ever experience a shift so big again, because it was transformative, and it was transcendental. So that absolutely, but that's not a necessary, you know, thing to get me to where I am. I'm so grateful for that plant medicine being that fork in the road for me. So yeah, absolutely. That was a huge part of it, but that means nothing. The plant medicine experience means nothing if I don't apply it to my life, if I don't take away lessons, right? Like what Amanda's talking about. So absolutely iboga, iboga is the name of the plant medicine that I experienced. Iboga, just a very much a whole like.
But even without iboga, if somebody wanted to just like confront those things that they felt like had defined them, that's still a process. People do that in therapy. I feel like I did that to reshape my beliefs. So like, is that a takeaway that you feel like really helped keep you shifted?
Oh yeah. Well, because it put me in a place where I felt as though I was sort of forced to confront some of these uncomfortable pieces of me. And we would all be very uncomfortable with that. We are. It's just part of being human. But it was because the plant medicine experience put me in a situation where I felt sort of forced to participate in life or in my consciousness about this. What I realized in it is that after the first 2 or 3 issues that I had to kind of like actually fully process and feel and filter, I was still alive. I wasn't dead. It didn't actually hurt as bad as I thought it was going to hurt. It didn't leave scars. I think that one of my biggest fears my whole life, when thinking about the areas that I don't want to think about, you know, like the hurt and the pain, one of my biggest fears was that, well, if I think about it, or if I try and process it or clean it out, it's just going to leave more scars. I'm going to just bleed even more. And that is not true at all. Like, it felt good, and it felt clean, and it felt powerful, and it felt free, super free, really, really honest. Really honest. And oh my goodness, when we can be honest with ourselves, like when I can, like, in my own head think to myself, all right, so like I was a complete jerk in that situation and I do not deserve their forgiveness, but the fact that they gave forgiveness to me is such a gesture of love that I will spend the rest of my friendship with that person pouring into them because of that mercy. Like, you know what I'm talking about? That's some good stuff, you know? And yeah, definitely. It's just, and you don't need plant medicine to get there. It's an aid, it's a tool, but like, don't be afraid of ourselves, maybe. That's the lesson I learned. I shouldn't be afraid of myself. And I still get afraid of myself. I haven't figured it out yet completely at all, of course. You know, I still get afraid, and I still kind of go back to those baser like instincts to kind of just, I don't know, kind of withdraw or kind of just hide away, like my little parts that are just, I don't know, unfriendly. But it's, I just have to remind myself, or have my good friends like you guys remind me that there's nothing to be scared of. It's only good things on the other side, you know? Gosh, yeah.
Well, because there's a big difference between bringing this thing up and clearing it out because you're going to decide to make it mean something different than you've made it mean all this time, something more positive, and just torturing yourself with the replay, right? I mean, that's what people do. That's why we feel bad all the time, is because we're taking these past things and we're just bringing them up over and over again on a replay, and it just tortures us over and over. We feel bad again, all over again. So there's a difference between that and what you're saying about dealing with it once and for all, and then it feels free and clear because why is that different? I mean, I think it's, what we're saying is it's because we're changing the meaning of that memory, that painful thing, right?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of it meaning we're a horrible person or whatever we've been telling ourselves, now we're changing it and we're saying, no, I'm going to make it mean I just made a mistake. And everybody makes mistakes. Or this is just one time. This doesn't define my whole life. Or we're making it mean something different, right?
Yes, we're turning poison into medicine is what we're doing. I know it's my thing. But that is exactly.
I know, we love saying that. Yes. It's so true. That's exactly what it is. So, okay, so that's what happened, and that's what happened for me a lot too, was cleaning that stuff out and reframing what it meant. And then having to keep reframing it every time it starts to come up, right? Because that doesn't mean it's like gone forever. Like, my stuff still comes up, and then I'm like, oh no, Heather, no, it didn't mean that. It meant this, remember? You know, and you have to like remind yourself. But so what about now? So what about when something happens that like knocks you off your, you know, good feeling state, and how do you get back there, or how do you maintain it?
So I practice meditation, and I that's a daily practice for me. And so when I reach those points, I tend to meditate often, like probably even more so than necessary, just because I know it's like a comfort place for me. It's like nothing can hurt me when I'm meditating, if that makes sense. It's probably like kind of the opposite of the concept, but like, so meditation for me personally is a place where I grow, absolutely, and can find a recentering. But I'm not always close enough to that high state of being to just sit down and meditate, you know, because life gets really crazy. And sometimes meditating is the most frightening aspect of trying to fix myself. Because meditating is like, you're going into the void with just your thoughts, and you're just going to try and ignore them. Like, it's hard work. It's hard work when you've got a lot of emotions running high and stuff. So what I always go back to, and it works every time, and it is more than healing, is what my grandma would say: count your blessings. I recite things that I am grateful for, and I recite them. I say it out loud. I mean, like, I'll make a list too, but like if I'm at a bad place, I have to say it out loud. I have to claim it, and it's really uncomfortable, the first few things that I say out loud, you know, because I don't want to, and I just want to be scared or hurt or bitter, you know. I just want to stay in that place because that I understand, and that I have like this sense of victim, you know, and I feel blameless in it. But like after the first 2 or 3 things I say out loud that I'm grateful for, it's so good. It's so easy. It just keeps falling out of my mouth, you know, because I never run out of things to say. And it's wild to say things out loud. And I know I sound a little crazy. And maybe that's part of my process, is I got to let myself go a little crazy so that I know that it's real inside me, you know, that it mattered that much, that I actually had to scream out loud that I'm grateful for the sunshine, you know. Oh, but it just works every time. It works every time. It doesn't change the circumstances, and it doesn't give me solutions necessarily, but it reminds me, like Amanda was saying, it reminds me that, that we're all a little piece of magic, and it's going to be okay, you know? So yeah, the count your blessings, that's my personal go-to to kind of try and get back there.
I love that.
So it reminds me, so saying it out loud is super powerful and a great thing to do. And I do the same thing. There is something, writing it down is powerful, and that's great too if you want to keep a journal or something, but saying it out loud, yeah. Because Abraham Hicks she calls it a rampage.
Oh, yeah.
And I do this, I'm driving in the car, and I do this a lot now if I'm, just driving around, because you can talk to yourself. Everybody does it. It's normal. Nobody looks at you.
They don't know if you're singing.
They don't know. You could be on a call, whatever. So I talk to myself in the car, and this was one thing I wanted to say. Sometimes, every time, you can't get, I think this is important to know, you can't get from feeling super, super, super bad to feeling super, super, super good. That jump, those lily pads don't connect, right? Like, that's something we've all learned. Abraham Hicks talks about this too. You can get to the next closest better feeling, right? So like, if you're sad, angry is actually a more positive feeling than sad and depressed. Like, it really is. If you think about when you were depressed and think about how numbing and, you don't care and it is so hard to climb out of a depression. But I think that a lot of times it feels even harder because people say, we'll just feel better. Well, you can't get from depressed to feeling good. You can't. It's too big of a leap. So if you can get from depressed to pissed off, or even depressed to like hate, is a better one, because now you're feeling a fire, right? Where when you're depressed, the fire is out, and that's scary. That's a bad one, right? So light a fire, get pissed, get angry, put some fight in you. That's an easier jump or climb. And then from there, you start slowly working your way up. Like, what does she say? Does she say, even revenge is better than hate or something? Like, she goes through this ladder where you're like, damn, I thought she was talking about like inner peace and being happy, but she's for real. Like, when you're down there, you can't get to inner peace when you're...
She's talking about the ladder.
The ladder. Basically. It's a ladder, and she gives a step-by-step. Like, when you're here, just go to here. When you're here, just go to here. And you're like, wow, and you feel it. Imagine how that feels, and you're like, yeah, that's true. That does feel better than that. And it's so interesting. So when you're feeling really knocked around, trying to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and meditate, and then I'm going to find my inner peace, is setting yourself up for failure a lot of times, because it's just too big of a leap. So what I'll do in the car when I talk to myself is she goes on this rampage of gratitude, and gratitude is great, but like when you're pissed or something, when you're really down on yourself and you can't get all the way there. I have bridged that gap before, where I'll just talk to myself and I'll be like, the situation is really, really shitty. I don't really like it. There's not really much about it that I can like right now. I feel like I don't have any options. And I just say all this. I just keep talking to myself out loud about how I'm feeling about this. And then as I'm talking, I can reach for like, but I've been in a situation kind of like this before, and I didn't die. Or wherever you can get in that moment, right? Or I overcame it. Or, well, it didn't last forever. And then it went away, and it went away for a long time. And yeah, it's back, but like, it's probably going to go away again because it really wasn't here my whole life. And, slowly you get to where by the end you're like, wow, the things I'm saying aren't as dark as when I started. And if that is the best you can do that day, then that is still a win. That's still a great place to be, and I think that's important to know because don't set yourself up for an impossibility, really. So that's one thing that I do that Chelsea made me think of is talking out loud. Yeah. And even if it's just sort of like this rationalizing where you're slowly making it an improved outlook, that's the work we're talking about here. Another thing that Amanda made me think of that when I was saying, what do you do in the moment? And you were saying when you're down in it, you can't remember how to get out of it. So you need a way to remind yourself. So the voice notes and calling a friend. And I can't remember who it was, but I was at a book signing once and it was another author. And I don't know how we got asked a question like this on a book panel, but we did. And it was similar to what we're talking about here because her answer was what she does is she keeps a box on her dresser. And in that box, she has written notes to herself about times that she's gone through stuff and like she's reminding herself how to feel better. There are objects in there that are meaningful and special to her that she only ever takes out and looks at when she's feeling down, when she's facing something hard, when she's depressed, when she's in it, And all of the things in that box are designed to remind her how to feel better. Not just to feel better, because we all know that when you're like in it, you just can't. It's just too hard. But how to. We can't remember how to feel better. Mm-hmm. So she has this box that she'll just go and open when she's feeling it. And it will be the reminders that she needs about how to feel better. I wish I could remember who it was because it was such a cool idea. But so even those like physical reminders, like we were saying about those tools, because here's the other thing we didn't talk about. Not everybody in your life is going to be on board. If you've been a negative person for a long time, or you've just been feeling victimized, or just like your circumstances are happening to you instead of for you, or whatever, and now you're like, okay, I'm going to start trying to cultivate this feeling good state of being, regardless of my outer circumstances, right? That's really hard to start. The momentum is really hard to build, much harder to build than maintain. And the people in your life are used to you being a certain way. So if you start being a different way, they're going to think you are crazy. Right? Like, okay, Chelsea, did people in your life think you were crazy when you came back from Flint?
Well, they still do. It's been years. And they still do. Right. They're all waiting for me to go back.
Well, my mom thought I was having a midlife crisis. And I think she still does, actually, 6 years later. And so, like people will have to label this whatever you are to them now. So it's really hard. So putting these things in place about what you're going to do is so important because you can't necessarily rely on the people around you unless you have friends like us, unless you have friends like us. So, I mean, that's kind of why we are doing this podcast is to show women that you're worth it to go find and cultivate relationships like this that are going to build you up instead of let you stay in that place.
Yeah, for sure.
That are going to reach down and pull you up. Yeah.
So. Medicine, people medicine.
So we're lucky, but we're not an anomaly. Anybody can go cultivate friendships like this and just be on purpose about it.
Yes.
All right. So to wrap it up, I know we could keep going about this topic for a really long time, but to wrap it up, Amanda, do you have a final thought for the honeys that you want to leave them with?
I do. I would say that make up your mind first and decide that if you really want something, decide who you're going to be to have that something. So I would say decide first. And the second thing is I would find whatever works for you to remind yourself how to feel good. Exactly like Heather was saying, all of us have, different ways. What's interesting about all of our different strategies is that they're all verbal. So there may be some wisdom in that maybe you do need to hear it. So maybe you need to hear it from your friends, from yourself on a recording, or from yourself live right there in the car. But definitely, find out what works for you, what resonates with your heart so that you can get out of that place even faster and keep moving forward without stopping.
Oh, for sure. And I would probably say, don't be afraid to give yourself permission to be exactly who you are. And that means free. It means perfectly made. It means accepting yourself. Give yourself permission, even if no one else in your life is going to give you that permission. Just give it to yourself. Trust yourself with that. And in the words of my grandmother, Millie Murphy, count your blessings. Yeah, that's what I would say. It helps. It lifts you up. Yeah. What about you, Heather?
That is beautiful. I would say if you're waiting for something to change or someone to change it for you, stop. The only way it's going to change, the only way how you feel is going to improve is if you improve it. And so you have to decide that the pain of staying where you are is greater than your fear of changing.
Amen.
And that our life's purpose is to feel good. That is your birthright.
Yes.
That's
So
right.
start feeling good, honeys. Whatever it takes. And that's it for us this week. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please find us, look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and be sweet.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Raw Honeys podcast. If so, please share it with a friend or post a review. Heather, Chelsea, and I would love to connect with you. Check us out on Instagram at the Raw Honeys or join our community of honeys on Facebook. Thanks for listening. We wish you nothing but big love.